She didn't cry. That was the first thing that felt wrong, though everything after it felt worse. Emily sat across from me at the small dining table we bought second-hand 3 years ago, the one with the slight wobble in its left leg that I kept meaning to fix. Her legs were crossed, posture effortless, fingers resting lightly on a porcelain mug she hadn't touched. Her face was calm, almost bored, as if she were waiting for the bus instead of dismantling a life. "I cheated," she said. Her voice didn't shake. No crack, no tremor, no fear of consequence, just a fact delivered cleanly. I stared at the condensation ring beneath my glass of water. It had soaked into the wood, darkening it permanently. Funny how some marks never come out, no matter how much you scrub. "I cheated," she repeated, tilting her head slightly. More than once. Still no tears, no apology either. The silence between us stretched, thick and heavy, but I didn't feel it. I'd learned long ago that silence is a shield. Words can be twisted. Silence simply sits there, daring the truth to come out on its own. She took my quiet as permission. "They were successful," she continued, confident. "Men who knew what they were worth." Her lips curved into a faint smile, curiosity flickering in her eyes. Not guilt, but interest. Like she was studying my reaction, taking notes. I felt something tighten in my chest, not sharp enough to be pain yet, just pressure, like a storm building far out at sea. "And before you ask," she said, waving a hand, "yes, the sex was better." There it was. The word landed hard, but didn't surprise me. She said sex like it was currency, something spent wisely only by those who could afford it. I finally looked up at her. Really looked. This was the woman I had married. The woman who laughed with her whole body when I told stupid jokes. The woman who used to curl her toes against my calf at night just to make sure I was there. Somewhere along the way, she'd hardened into someone else. Or maybe she always had been, and I'd been too busy surviving to notice. She leaned forward then, elbows on the table, eyes sharp. "You're not just poor, Ryan," she said softly. "You're the poorest man I know." The words slid across the table and cut deep. "And I only sleep with successful men." No venom, no raised voice, just certainty. I didn't react, I didn't shout or plead, I didn't ask why, because the answer was sitting right there in her smile. My hands rested flat on my thighs, nails digging into denim just enough to keep me grounded. Inside, though, everything cracked. Not loudly, quiet breaks are worse, they echo longer. I thought about the years I worked late shifts, the weekends I skipped rest so we could afford little luxuries she stopped noticing. The way I'd told myself it was temporary. That one day things would change, that I just needed time. She stood, chair scraping against the floor. The sound felt too loud in the small apartment. "I didn't mean to hurt you," she said, and for a moment I almost laughed at how unnecessary the lie was. But I won't pretend anymore. I refuse to be ashamed. She walked past me, her perfume lingering in the air, familiar, now nauseating. At the doorway she paused, glanced back once and sighed as if relieved. I remained seated, because if I stood up, I wasn't sure who I would become. So I stayed still, letting the silence swallow her footsteps, letting the truth settle into every corner of the room. That was the night my marriage ended. And the moment something else began. She packed her things slowly. That was the second strange thing. Emily didn't rush, didn't cry into drawers or yank clothes from hangers in a frenzy of regret. No. She moved with intention, like every folded blouse and placed shoe was part of a performance meant for an audience of one. Me. Each deliberate motion whispered the same message. I am in control. I stayed in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch. The cushions dipped where her body used to be. The TV was off. The apartment felt hollow without sound, like it was holding its breath. From the bedroom came the soft slide of hangers, the dull thud of a suitcase hitting the floor. Zippers opened, zippers closed. Time stretched and warped, every second pressing against my skull. I could have followed her, could have leaned against the doorframe and demanded explanations that no longer mattered. I could have begged, argued, raged, but that would have given her something, and she didn't deserve anything else from me. Memories intruded anyway. Her back in that doorway years ago, naked except for one of my shirts. The way she used to sit on the counter while I cooked, stealing bites and laughing when I swatted her hand away. The sex. Uncomplicated then, hungry and real. It hurt to realize she'd reduced all of that to a hierarchy of bank accounts. A suitcase rolled into the hall, wheels clicking against the floor. She followed, carrying her laptop bag over one shoulder, coat draped neatly over her arm. Oh, she looked good. Of course she did. Carefully composed, lipstick perfect, eyes bright with something dangerously close to satisfaction. She stopped near the door, adjusting her hair as though we were about to attend a dinner party together. "I've transferred my things into storage already," she said casually. "You don't need to worry about anything financial. There's nothing to split anyway." Nothing to split. I clenched my jaw. She slipped on her coat, slow enough that every movement dragged across my nerves. Then she reached for the handle, but paused. She turned around. For a fraction of a second, I almost hoped that there would be hesitation, guilt, something human behind her eyes. Instead, she smiled, not cruelly, worse, politely. "Hate me if you want," she said. "But the truth is, you're nobody." The words landed harder than her confession. She tilted her head, studying me like a finished experiment. "You had time, Ryan, years, and you're still here, same apartment, same life, same excuses." I opened my mouth, felt words rise, and then I closed it again. Silence. Her smile widened, relief flickering across her face as though my quiet absolved her of something. She turned back to the door. "I hope you find peace," she added, as if that were possible after this. The door slammed shut. The sound cracked through the apartment, final and absolute. The walls seemed to vibrate with it, as though even they understood this was an ending. I didn't move. Not right away. I listened to her footsteps fade down the hall. The elevator ding. The building settling back into its usual hum, indifferent to personal catastrophes. Only then did I stand. The air felt different without her. Lighter, colder. I walked through the apartment slowly, noticing things I hadn't before. The chipped paint near the kitchen sink, the stack of unopened mail on the counter, the faint smell of her perfume already starting to fade. In the bedroom, her closet space was empty, clean, like she'd never been there at all. I stopped in front of the mirror. The man staring back at me looked unchanged. Tired, maybe. Calm. No shattered glass eyes, no dramatic collapse. But something essential had shifted. She thought she had erased me. She had no idea what she'd actually done. That night, Ryan, the man she knew, disappeared. And in the quiet, among half-empty rooms and lingering echoes, something else began to take shape. People think collapse looks dramatic. They imagine screaming, bottles smashed against walls, nights drowned in alcohol and regret. They imagine a man falling apart in public, begging the universe for mercy. That wasn't me. I woke up at 6 the next morning, same as always. Showered, dressed. Ate 2 pieces of toast standing by the counter. The apartment was quiet in a way that felt surgical, stripped down to function. Her mug was gone. Her side of the closet was empty. No chaos, no aftermath, just absence. That was when I understood something important. Emily had never known me. She thought she had. She thought proximity meant access. She saw the surface, the apartment, the salary, the routine. She measured my worth by what I displayed, by what she could point at and compare to other men over cocktails and hotel sex. She judged my present. I had been building my future. I took the folder from the bottom drawer of my desk, the one she never touched because it looked boring. Inside were documents she'd never bothered to read, even if she had seen them. Contracts, incorporation filings, bank statements tied to an account not registered under my name, a silent partner. That had been the condition. An old mentor's idea, actually. Let the noise stay elsewhere. If it succeeds, you stay invisible. If it fails, you walk away clean. Emily used to joke about my friend from meetings. She never asked questions. She never cared enough to connect dots as long as dinner reservations arrived on time and the bed was warm. The first investment had been small. Small enough to look insignificant, even irresponsible. A local cafe struggling under bad management but prime location. I'd seen the numbers. I'd seen the potential. I'd also seen Emily scroll through her phone while I explained it once, nodding without listening. Whatever makes you happy, she'd said back then. She meant, whatever doesn't inconvenience me. I took the bus that morning, not because I had to, but because routine keeps thoughts orderly. The city passed by in muted colors, rain smearing the windows. I watched people go to jobs they hated, loved, tolerated. Everyone moving, convinced their story was visible to the world. It wasn't. At the office, no one mentioned my marriage. They didn't know. They knew deadlines, reports, my calm reliability. The man who kept things running quietly while louder personalities took credit. I liked it that way. During lunch, I checked the account. Still growing, not explosive, not flashy, consistent, predictable. Real wealth doesn't announce itself. It accumulates patiently, unnoticed by people too busy chasing signals of success. Emily had chased signals, cars, watches, hotel rooms with city views and expensive beds she believed meant something. She confused consumption with power. She slept with men who talked loudly because silence frightened them. I finished my workday and walked to the cafe. Our cafe. I didn't wipe tables then. I didn't need to. I sat in the corner booth with a notebook, observing. Staffing schedules, customer flow, lighting issues near the window. Everything she'd missed because it wasn't glamorous. The manager greeted me with respect, not admiration, not fear. Respect is better. Respect lasts. I corrected small things, asked quiet questions, made notes. There was satisfaction in it, not triumph, just alignment. The feeling of standing exactly where I'd meant to be all along. That night, alone in the apartment, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't check her social media. I didn't need to imagine her naked in someone else's bed, performing sex like a transaction meant to secure her place in a hierarchy she didn't understand. Let her have it. I poured myself a drink, just one, and stood by the window, watching the city lights blink on like secrets being kept. Emily thought I was behind. She thought I was stuck. What she'd never understood was that I'd chosen invisibility, chosen patience, chosen not to perform masculinity for an audience that only applauds when you're loud enough to be obvious. She believed success had a uniform. I believed in timing. I went to bed early, slept deeply, without dreams, and before my eyes closed, I made a decision so calm it felt inevitable. I wouldn't reveal the truth now, or soon. I would wait, because there's only one moment when truth truly matters. when the person hearing it finally understands the cost of their blindness. Time didn't rush. It never does when you're doing things the right way. Months turned into years without ceremony. No dramatic milestones, no public announcements. My life settled into a rhythm that felt almost meditative. Wake early, work quietly, invest patiently. Success crept in the way dawn does, slowly enough that you don't notice until the darkness is already gone. The cafe stabilized first, then it grew. We changed suppliers, improved margins, adjusted pricing subtly, just enough that customers stayed, spending slightly more without feeling squeezed. Staff turnover dropped. Happy employees make money quietly, efficiently. I reinvested everything. When a second location became available, I didn't hesitate. Same model, same silence. Different neighborhood, same hunger. People underestimate places that look modest. They assume ambition must announce itself. It doesn't. I still lived in the same apartment for a while. Not out of nostalgia, but discipline. Every unnecessary upgrade feels good for a month, then chains you to expectations. Freedom is lighter when you resist inflation. Emily, on the other hand, burned fuel fast. I heard things, not because I looked, but because news travels. Old acquaintances love updates when drama is involved. She upgraded her life aggressively, traded apartments like outfits. Men rotated quickly. Finance guys, startup founders, a surgeon at one point. She posted just enough online to suggest abundance without revealing instability. Hotel rooftops, champagne glasses, designer bags resting casually on marble tables. She looked expensive, but nothing she showed was permanent. Money stayed with her for stretches, months, sometimes a year, then vanished. Relationships ended quietly or explosively. I never asked which. Men who measure value correctly eventually notice when someone only loves the lifestyle, not the person funding it. Money doesn't stay where respect is missing. I noticed something else too. The gaps between her posts grew longer. The sparkle dulled. Her smile began to look practiced, tightened at the corners. Too much effort for someone supposedly winning. Too much proof required. Meanwhile, I opened a third cafe, then a fourth. I stopped visiting all of them personally. That's a good sign, systems working without your presence. I trusted my managers, paid them well, gave them autonomy. Loyalty grows fast when people feel seen. No interviews, no articles, no announcements. Power doesn't need validation. I dressed better, not flashier. Tailored jackets, good shoes. I walked differently. Not confident in the theatrical sense, but grounded. When you know exactly where you stand, your body stops performing uncertainty. Sometimes I wondered if Emily would recognize me anymore. Then I realized the question itself was flawed. She'd never recognized me at all. One evening, I passed a restaurant window and glimpsed her inside. By accident, like all truths worth having. She was laughing, leaning close to a man whose watch caught the light deliberately. Her body language was familiar, memorized. This was a routine. Seduction as maintenance. I didn't stop walking. There was no satisfaction in watching her. No resentment either. She was doing exactly what she'd always valued. I had done the same, just differently. By the third year, I moved. Smaller place, better location. Intentional. Everything I owned had purpose. Minimalism isn't about lack, it's about clarity. On quiet nights, I'd sit with a book, or sometimes just think. About timing, about dignity, about choice. Revenge never crossed my mind as a craving. I wasn't interested in hurting her. Pain fades too quickly. People rebuild narratives around it. Understanding lasts longer. If she ever learned the truth, it would have to arrive uninvited, unexpected, something she could not reframe or control. Chance would do the work for me, and chance, I've learned, favors people who wait. By the time our paths crossed again, years had passed. She thought she had lived a lifetime. I had built one. It was raining, the kind of rain that sinks into your shoes and mood equally, cold, persistent, unforgiving. I hadn't planned to be at that cafe that afternoon. One of the managers had called in sick and the replacement was late. Nothing dramatic, just a gap in the machine. So I showed up, no announcement, no entourage, just a jacket over a sweater, sleeves rolled up, doing what needed to be done. I wiped tables, restocked napkins, took orders when the line grew long. Ownership doesn't disappear when success arrives. It either deepens or rots. Mine had deepened. The place was quiet. Mid-afternoon lull, soft music, steam rising from cups, the smell of coffee blending with rain-soaked coats, people hiding from the weather and their thoughts. Then the door opened. The bell chimed once. I didn't look up immediately. I was wiping a table near the window, slow and thorough, my mind elsewhere. Inventory, schedules, the new lease negotiation 2 streets over. "Heating feels nice," a familiar voice said behind me. My hand paused, not because I recognized it instantly, but because something in my body did, muscle memory, maybe, or instinct. Some memories lodge deeper than thought. I straightened and turned. Emily stood just inside the door, shaking rain from her hair, a thin coat clinging to her frame. No man beside her, no confidence escorting her in, just her and a worn leather purse pulled tight against her side. Time had passed. She was still beautiful, but sharper now, edges exposed. The gloss was gone. Her heels were practical. Her makeup understated in a way that suggested necessity rather than taste. Her eyes found me, and brightened, then narrowed, then lit up with something dangerously close to amusement. "Well," she said, laughing softly as she stepped forward, "look at you." Her gaze traveled openly, from the cloth in my hand to my rolled sleeves to the name tag I wore for staff anonymity. I said nothing. She smiled wider. "Guess the poor stay poor," she continued lightly, lowering her voice as if sharing a joke meant only for us. "At least they pay you for cleaning tables now, right?" A couple at the counter glanced over, curious. Staff froze for half a second, subtle but noticeable. They'd sensed a shift without knowing why. I met her eyes, calm, no anger, no satisfaction, just presence. She waited, for embarrassment maybe, or a flinch. "You always liked pretending to be humble," she added. "I guess this is one way to commit to the image." She laughed again, louder this time, and shook her head as if attending a private comedy at my expense. "I mean, wow. After all that talk about plans and patience," she said, making air quotes, "you couldn't even climb out of mediocrity." She leaned closer, voice dropping. "But hey," she whispered, smiling sweetly, "at least you're consistent." I set the cloth down neatly on the table. Still no response. That unsettled her. She straightened, irritation flickering across her face before she masked it. She glanced around the cafe, unimpressed, then back to me. "I'll have a coffee," she said. "Black, no sugar. Some of us still have standards." I turned and walked toward the counter. Behind me, she scoffed softly. I heard her sit down. I heard the chair scrape. I heard her exhale. Tired, though she wouldn't admit it out loud. At the counter, my hands moved automatically. Cup, machine, steam, everything precise. Controlled. Inside, something ancient clicked into place. Not rage, not revenge, timing. She thought this was coincidence. She thought life had finally proven her right. She had no idea she'd just walked into the one place where her story, and mine, were about to collide in a way she couldn't afford to misunderstand. The rain kept falling outside. Inside, everything was perfectly still. I placed the cup on the counter and slid it toward her table myself. Black coffee, no sugar, exactly as ordered. She looked up at me with a crooked smile, the kind she used when she thought she had power in a room. Her fingers brushed the cup, but she didn't drink yet. She wanted to savor the moment first, to see me standing there, silent, serving. "Didn't think you were the service type," she said. "But I guess life humbles everyone eventually." Around us, the cafe had gone unnaturally quiet. People pretend not to listen, but humiliation carries. It changes the air. A barista near the espresso machine avoided looking at me. Another staff member stood frozen mid-task, eyes darting between us. Emily didn't notice. She never noticed rooms, only reflections. "So," she continued, crossing her legs again, recreating the posture from years ago like muscle memory. "How is it? Scrubbing tables, taking orders, must be exhausting, but honest work, right?" I met her gaze. She blinked, expecting something, defensiveness, anger, shame. I gave her nothing. That finally unsettled her. "What?" she snapped lightly, masking irritation with a laugh. "Don't tell me you're still holding a grudge. Ryan, that was years ago. You survived. Look at you." She gestured vaguely at the cafe, the table, me. "This is cute, in a sad way." I took a breath, then let it out. Still nothing. Before she could fill the silence again, a man approached from behind the counter. Late 30s, well-dressed, sharp eyes. One of my senior managers, from the second location. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said politely. Emily barely spared him a glance. "Yes? The owner has asked you to leave." She laughed immediately, short, sharp, dismissive. "The owner?" She tilted her head. "Where is he then? Hiding in the back?" A few customers shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The barista's hands trembled slightly. The manager didn't react. "He's asked you to leave," he repeated. Calm, final. Emily's smile wavered. She looked from him to me, then back again. "This is ridiculous," she said, standing abruptly. "I haven't done anything wrong." The manager turned his head slightly, toward me, not obviously, just enough. Emily followed the motion. Her eyes locked onto mine. Confusion crept in first, then disbelief, then something colder. I reached up and removed the name tag, setting it gently on the counter. One small motion. I slipped off my jacket next, folded it with care, and draped it over my arm. The cafe felt like it had stopped breathing. "Come outside," I said, one word. Her mouth opened, closed. She laughed, but it came out wrong this time, thin, forced. "You're joking," she said quietly. I didn't answer. I turned and walked toward the door, not fast, not slow, certain. Behind me, after a heartbeat too long, I heard her heels move. Follow. Outside, the rain was still falling, and with every step she took after me, something essential inside her began to fracture, though she still didn't know why. Not yet. Outside, the rain had teeth. It bit through fabric, through confidence, through whatever weak armor pride still provided. Water streaked down the glass behind us, blurring the cafe into a warm smear of light and silhouettes. The world narrowed to the narrow strip of sidewalk, the gray sky, and the sound of rain striking concrete with relentless precision. Emily stopped a few steps away from me. Her laugh came again, but it was already unraveling. "This isn't funny," she said, folding her arms, as if cold were suddenly the problem. "If this is some kind of game, you've taken it far enough." I turned to face her fully. Up close, I could see it now, the strain she hid so carefully, the faint lines around her eyes, the way her mascara threatened to run but hadn't yet, the subtle tremor in her hands that had nothing to do with the weather. I gestured with my chin toward the cafe window. Inside, the staff stood still, waiting, not confused, not amused, respectful, expectant. Emily followed my gaze, her brow furrowed. "What is this supposed to prove?" she demanded. "You embarrassed me in there. Congratulations. Is this finally your revenge fantasy coming true?" She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Because if so, it's pathetic." I said nothing. Silence again, the same weapon, sharper now. She exhaled hard, frustration rising to the surface. "Ryan, stop this. You work here, fine, good for you. But kicking me out like I'm some kind of criminal, that's humiliating." Her voice cracked on the last word. That surprised her. She swallowed and straightened, instinctively trying to regain control. "You're enjoying this," she accused. "You always wanted me to feel small, didn't you? Like you did all those years pretending to be satisfied with nothing." Pretending. I almost smiled at the irony. Instead, I lifted my hand slightly and gestured toward the door again. The glass, the staff, the name above the entrance etched in subtle metal lettering most customers never bothered to read. My last name. Her eyes followed the movement. She squinted, then leaned back slightly, craning her neck, rainwater dripping down her hairline. The letters came into focus slowly, like a language she'd never bothered to learn. Her breath caught. "No," she said immediately. "Too fast, too loud. No, that doesn't mean anything." I watched realization try to claw its way past denial. "You're lying," she whispered. "This is some sick joke." I shook my head once, minimal, decisive. Behind the glass, the manager raised a phone, already dialing. Security protocol, not drama. Another quiet confirmation. Her knees weakened. Not dramatically, no cinematic collapse, just a subtle shift in balance, like the ground had quietly stepped away from her feet. "This cafe is mine," I said. The words landed with weight. Not arrogance, not threat. Statement. The rain seemed louder after that. She stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign tongue, searching my face for cues, for smugness, cruelty, triumph. There was none. "You cleaned tables," she said faintly. "I saw you." "I do what's needed," I replied. Her mouth opened, closed. Her thoughts spiraled visibly, scrambling to rebuild a reality that had just cracked wide open. "This doesn't make sense," she said. "You were broke. You were always—" "Invisible," I finished calmly. "By choice." Her chest rose and fell rapidly now. Pride was bleeding out, replaced by panic. She stepped closer without realizing it, rain soaking into her coat unnoticed. "All those years," she whispered. "You let me think. I let you believe what you wanted to believe," I said. "You never asked." Her eyes filled at last. Not from sadness alone, but from a terror deeper than tears. The terror of understanding. She looked back through the glass one more time, at the people waiting for my signal, at a world that suddenly made sense too late. Then back at me. Her voice dropped to almost nothing. "You're not poor," she said. I didn't correct her. Because the final collapse wasn't about money. It was about realizing she had destroyed something rare and chosen glitter instead, and there was no way to buy back time. The rain slowed, thinning into a mist, but Emily didn't notice. Tears finally came, quiet at first, then unstoppable. They cut clean trails down her face, smearing mascara, erasing effort. She didn't even bother wiping them away. Pride had already loosened its grip, fingers slipping, nails breaking. Ryan. Her voice shook, as if speaking my name alone required permission. I didn't know. There it was, the sentence people reach for when truth corners them. I swear I didn't know, she repeated, closer now, stepping into my space like habit could protect her. If I had known, I would have— You would have what? I asked calmly. She froze. Thought searched for footing and found none. I would have stayed, she said finally, and the honesty of it was sharper than any lie. I would have seen you, understood you. She shook her head, almost angry at herself. I was stupid. I measured everything wrong. Money, success. God, I thought being chosen by powerful men meant something. Her laugh broke into a sob. They used me, she whispered. I thought I was in control, but I was just convenient. The word tasted bitter even to her. She reached for my hands, pressing them between hers, desperate warmth against the cold. Please, she said. I was wrong. I admit it. I misjudged you. I misjudged everything. I looked down at our hands. She was trembling. Not theatrical this time. Real fear. Real loss. I can change, she rushed on. I don't care about money anymore. I don't care about any of that. I just want— She swallowed, eyes locked on mine. You. The rain glistened on her skin, making her look fragile in a way she never had before. Years ago, that look would have cracked me open. I would have pulled her close, let her promise rewrite history, believed love could be salvaged from timing and regret. But that man was gone. You didn't misjudge me, I said quietly. You ignored me. Her grip tightened. No. You decided value had a price, I continued. And when you thought I couldn't pay it, you treated me accordingly. She shook her head violently. I was scared. Everyone was ahead of us. I didn't want to be stuck. That's the difference, I replied. I was building. You were escaping. Her chest heaved, breath uneven. I didn't leave because I didn't love you. I left because I didn't respect you. The words spilled out before she realized what she'd said. Her eyes widened, and there it was, the truth she hadn't planned to reveal. I nodded slowly. That's the first honest thing you've said. She covered her mouth, horrified. I didn't mean— I know, I said. You meant exactly that. Her knees buckled then. She sank onto the wet concrete, not caring anymore. Rain soaked her clothes, chilled her to the bone, but she stayed there, holding onto my hands like they were a lifeline. I see you now, she whispered. I swear I do. You're strong. You always were. I was blind. I gently eased my hands free. The loss of contact hit her harder than the rain ever could. She looked up at me from the ground, eyes red, face open, stripped of every advantage she'd once wielded. Ryan, she said again, voice breaking, please forgive me. I'll do anything. Anything. I thought about the night she didn't come home, the words she'd chosen so precisely at our table. You're nobody. The way she'd spat poverty like it was a moral failure. Forgiveness isn't something you demand when it becomes convenient. I believe you, I said softly. Hope flared in her eyes. I believe you're sorry, I added. And I believe you finally understand. Her shoulders sagged with relief. But understanding doesn't undo choice. The hope faded, replaced by panic. I don't want your apology, I continued. And I don't need your regret. Those are for you, not me. She stared up at me as if waiting for a door to open. It didn't. I spent years becoming someone you wouldn't recognize, I said, my voice steady. Not so you'd want me back, but so I'd never need you again. Her sobs returned, raw and unguarded. "I loved you," she cried. "I still do." I believed that too, but love without respect is just hunger. The cafe door opened behind me. A manager cleared his throat softly, polite, never intrusive. It was time. I looked down at Emily one last time. The woman who had chosen glitter over gravity, desire over devotion, noise over depth. "I forgive you," I said. She gasped. "For what forgiveness actually is," I added. "Release." I turned away. Behind me, she remained on the pavement, crying into the rain, learning the last lesson timing ever teaches, that some doors don't reopen. Not because you weren't loud enough, but because you knocked far too late. I listened. That was the part she never expected. I stood a few steps away while Emily cried on the wet pavement, shoulders shaking, breath breaking apart in uneven pieces. I didn't interrupt. I didn't hurry her. I'd learned long ago that when people finally stop performing, they reveal more in their silence than their words ever could. She talked anyway. Between sobs, between gulps of air, she confessed things she'd never planned to say out loud. How the men she'd chased always grew bored once the novelty wore off. How sex had slowly stopped being desire and turned into leverage, something traded for dinners, trips, security she could never quite lock down. How waking up next to strangers in expensive beds had felt lonelier than our small apartment ever had. "I thought freedom meant options," she said hoarsely. But it was just noise. Empty noise. I believed her. I also understood something she still didn't. Regret feels profound when it's new. It feels transformative. But regret is cheap. Everyone can afford it after the damage is done. She looked up at me finally, eyes swollen, face exposed, waiting. Waiting for the moment stories promise. The softening. The man who relents because he is good, because she has suffered enough. I felt nothing of the sort, not anger, not pleasure, clarity. "You want this to be a mistake," I said calmly. "Something forgivable, a deviation from who you really are." She nodded frantically. "Yes, it was, I swear." "But it wasn't," I continued. "It was a decision, repeated, reinforced, defended." She flinched. "You didn't trip into betrayal," I said. "You invested in it, with enthusiasm." Her mouth trembled. "That's not fair." "It's exact," I replied. The rain had almost stopped now, leaving the world washed clean. Cars passed at a distance. Life continued without ceremony, without interest in personal revelations. "I don't hate you," I said, and meant it. "That would imply you still matter to me in that way." Her breath hitched. "I needed you to see me," she whispered, "to chase me, to fight for me." I nodded. "I did, for years, quietly, consistently. You mistook that for weakness." She bowed her head. "And when you found men who fought loudly, who spent loudly, you confused aggression with value," I added. "You confused sex with worth." She didn't argue. That was new. "I know my apology won't fix this," she said. "But at least let me explain, let me try." I watched her carefully then. Not the woman she'd been to me once, not the stranger she'd become, but the person sitting raw in front of consequences she could no longer charm her way around. "I'm not interested in explanations," I said at last. "Only patterns." She looked up, eyes searching. "You didn't make a mistake," I continued. "You made a choice. Money over loyalty, status over intimacy, validation over character." I stepped back, creating space she instinctively tried to close. "And that choice cost you something real." Her face crumpled. "I've lost everything," she said. "No," I corrected gently. "You lost me. Everything else was never yours to begin with." The words landed heavily, not as punishment but as truth. She reached for me again, slower this time, cautious, like approaching something sacred. "Please," she said, "just don't disappear. Even if you don't want me, don't erase me." There it was, the final fear, invisibility. I met her eyes one last time. "No," I said, one word, clean, final. She recoiled as if struck. "You can walk away believing you were unlucky," I continued, "or unlucky in love, or misunderstood, but the truth is simpler." I turned toward the cafe door. "You didn't lose a man because he wasn't good enough," I said over my shoulder. "You lost one because you never saw him as human." Her sob broke something open behind me. I didn't look back. I held the door for no one as I stepped inside. The warmth wrapped around me immediately, the soft hum of conversation returning, machines steaming, life resuming exactly where it had paused. One of the staff met my eyes, searching for cues. I nodded once. It was over, not with cruelty, not with spectacle. The cruelest part wasn't what I said, it was that I said it without needing her reaction. That's the kind of revenge no apology can touch, because it isn't built on spite, it's built on freedom. She walked away without looking back. At first, slowly, unsteady, like someone learning how to move with a missing limb. Then faster. Pride demanded distance. Fear demanded escape. Both lost to reality eventually, but that wasn't my concern anymore. Through the cafe window, I saw her pause at the corner. Just once. As if some last miracle might call her name, rewrite the day, turn humiliation into reunion. When nothing happened, her shoulders collapsed inward, and she disappeared into the gray street like someone the city had never needed. The rain erased her quickly. I stayed by the window longer than I needed to. Not because I missed her, because endings deserve witness. Inside, the cafe had returned to life. Cups clinked. Someone laughed too loudly. A couple argued quietly over cake choices. The smell of coffee grounded everything, warm and ordinary and real. That mattered more than it used to. A barista approached, hesitant. "You okay?" I nodded. "Take your break, I've got it." She smiled, not relieved, not worried, just respectful. That kind of smile doesn't come from fear or obligation. It comes from knowing exactly who's standing in front of you. I wiped the counter myself. Slowly. Thoughtfully. There was no rush. People imagine closure comes with fireworks, with speeches, dramatic exits, a swelling sense of victory. They imagine revenge tastes sweet. It doesn't. It tastes quiet. It tastes like breathing without checking who's listening. Like sleeping without waiting for a phone to light up. Like knowing no part of your value depends on being chosen. Emily had chosen loudly. I had chosen well. Later that evening, when the cafe emptied and lights dimmed to golden calm, I turned the sign to closed and locked the door. Outside, the street glistened with reflected lamplight, the city humming its endless, uninterested song. I didn't think about where she went. I didn't imagine her nights or her regrets or the shape of her loneliness. Those thoughts belonged to people still tied to outcomes. I was done with outcomes. I walked home, not to the old apartment, not to ghosts, but to a place that felt deliberate. Every indication of my life now was intentional. Nothing accidental, nothing tolerated. At home, I poured a glass of wine and stood by the window, watching the rain swallow headlights and memories alike. No victory smile came, no inner applause. Because this wasn't triumph, it was alignment. I hadn't won. I had simply stopped losing. Emily would remember today forever. She'd replay it late at night, reshaping dialogue, imagining better answers, better timing. She would tell herself stories where she was almost redeemed. I wouldn't be in them. That was the real ending. Not wealth, not exposure, not humiliation, indifference. The kind that isn't loud or cruel, but complete. Because the most devastating thing you can ever give to someone who once reduced you to nothing is to live well without needing them to see it, and to mean it.